Yo, what is up guys? Follis here. Today I'm going to be covering the PCSN setup. That's pump, consolidate, squeeze, nuke. This is a setup that I've been trading a lot lately, and it's probably one of my most requested videos. So we're going to get into it today and find out what it's all about. Now, before anyone comes at me for yet another acronym, I'm aware, yes, it is just an amalgamation of a number of different concepts. I did not invent this. I did not discover this. This is effectively PO3 with extra steps, right? It's a range deviation reversal, but the difference, I guess, the subtlety lies when I use it and the assets that I use it on. What do I mean by that? Let's get into the charts and find out. So the first coin we're going to look at today is ARPA, and some of you might remember that back in May of this year, this thing pumped like crazy. And as we play it on, this thing is already about 50 or 60% off the lows. As the price action moves forward here, that wasn't even the half of it, because as price clears these highs, it starts to go pretty parabolic, putting in higher highs here. And then all of a sudden, yeah, you see here, it does pretty much a 2x in less than 2 days. So I'm going to pause the tape here. We have the first two elements of the PCSN. We have the uptrend, we have the pump. At the end of that pump, we have the consolidation. And you'll see here that price consolidates for a while before spiking above this range, and only then do we get the fourth part of the setup, which is the nuke. You'll see that we're consolidating, and then price moves to the top of the range here and takes this high time frame level, and that'll become important once I explain to you some of the nuances of the setup and when you should and shouldn't look to act on it. So here we have the third part of the setup, which is the spike that takes high time frame liquidity. So what do we have so far? We have pump, we have an uptrend, we have two, we have consolidation at the top of that uptrend, we have three, we have a spike, and four, if I play on the tape, is the nuke. And this happens pretty quickly typically, right? This is the fourth part of the setup, where you get a very sharp move down, the top is in, and yeah, you'll see that often price will retrace, if not all of the upside, certainly a significant portion of it. As I play on the tape here, you see, yeah, price really does, from the high to the low, in a matter of, 2.5 days, it drops nearly 50% there. So now that we have the setup on the screen in front of us, let me talk you through the elements in a bit more detail. The uptrend, the first part of the setup. Typically, this is a setup that I try to take on alts that are overextended rather than alts that are just strong. Overextension can mean a number of different things, but typically what I'm looking for is almost illogical upside. I'm looking for alts that are doing 2x, 3x, plus 80%, plus 100%, some kind of crazy number that tells me that these things are really overbought, and if and when the top comes, they're going to fall pretty hard. So we have this upside, we have this pump. That's the first part. The second part is consolidation. This is pretty much the most important part of the setup. During this consolidation phase, you effectively have longs and shorts being baited into taking positions. Shorts entering every time price goes to the range high, looking for lower. You have longs entering every time price goes to the range low, looking for higher, right? What does that mean? It means that there is liquidity building up above and below this low time frame range. Typically, you'll also see a rise in OI. So while price is stagnant and just moving sideways, crab price action, OI is rising steadily, which tells us that new contracts are opening, new longs and new shorts are opening. So once the consolidation phase is over, typically you have a sharp spike up. It knocks all of these shorts out, because when people short inside this range, their stops are above the high, right? You knock all the shorts out, you sweep high time frame liquidity, and only then do you get the sharp move to the downside. So price moves from one liquidity pool to another liquidity pool, and in fact ends up moving even lower, retracing almost all of the upside. The second example we're going to look at is Edu. Now this was a coin that pumped back in May of this year, and once more I've rewound the tape so we can see how the price action played out. As I move things forward here, you'll see, yes, we get the big scam pump, the upside, and at the top of that upside, we get the consolidation. So let's put the labels in place now. We have the upside, the pump. We have the consolidation, we have the squeeze, and again, not only does it take low time frame liquidity at the high here, but it also takes high time frame liquidity at this high, and only then reverses. So if I put the label on first, and as you can probably guess as I play on the tape here, the nuke came shortly after. So yeah, as you see here, the downside was pretty quick. The upside was retraced from the top to the bottom, about a 25% retrace, most of the upside, if not all of the upside. Now again, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. This is not something that I invented or discovered. This is just power of 3 type setup. It's an AMD type setup, accumulation, manipulation, distribution. The difference lies in when and where I apply it. So I look for an altcoin that is pumping. I look for that altcoin to become potentially overbought and overextended. I look for a high time level to be swept in conjunction with a low time frame level at the top of this upside when price is accumulating, right? After the squeeze, I look for very quick and sustained downside. That is the PCSN setup as I play it. The next coin we're going to look at is Lena. You'll see that, yeah, we're getting our upside here. This is the first part of the PCSN, right? I'll pause it there and apply some labeling. You'll see, yes, this is the P, this is the pump. And at the top of this pump, what are we getting? We're getting consolidation. There's a subtle difference here I want to draw your attention to. You'll see that the squeeze was slightly different to the previous 2 examples. And again, took a high time frame level. But once we accepted back inside the range, price actually gave a really clean retest of the range high deviation here before continuing down with the nuke. And if I play on, you'll see exactly what I mean. So whereas with previous examples, it was actually quite tough to find an entry. You either had to enter on the sweep, which is quite risky because it's tough to define your invalidation, or you looked for something on the low time frame on the M2, M3, something like that. Here it was much cleaner. We have the squeeze, we have a move back inside the range, and you have a retest of the range high deviation, and only then does price move. So as I play the tape forward here, you'll see that we get the downside, and in the end, price has retraced the entire upside move. So this was another really clean example on Lena. The difference with this one, it was arguably an easier trade than the previous 2 because we had this pretty clean retest and it gave people the opportunity to get short with their stops above the high here, targeting the lows. Now this was actually a trade that I took myself. I shorted the squeeze. I saw signs on the M1 that we were rejecting and I entered with my stop above the wick. In the end, it was a great trade. It went for 4 OR. Things looked a little bit hairy when we got a retrace from, the low here all the way up pretty much to my entry. But I did have conviction the price would run in my direction eventually, which it did. I was pretty conservative with my target here. I was just looking for the range lows to get swept, but ultimately price went much lower. If I played more optimistic with my TP, could have been, something closer to a 7 OR trade. Although I'm never going to complain with 4 OR on a trade like that. The final example I want to look at is API 3, and this played out just a matter of days ago. So again, we have our upside here, we have our pump, we have the first part of PCSN. Now at the top of this pump, we have the consolidation. We have part 2. You'll see that part 3 is coming imminently. Quick spike up to take liquidity, and then a move down. This took a high time frame buy side level, and that'll become important in a moment, so keep that in mind. And again, we get this very, very sharp, very forceful downside. And if we go down to the M15, you'll see that once again, this asset actually provided a great entry here on the M15 FEG retrace. So unlike the first 2 examples, this was more like Lena in as much that it gave a cleaner chance to get involved and ride the move down. The nuance I want to draw everyone's attention to here is the high time frame sweep. So you'll see that in the previous 3 examples and this example as well, I draw this horizontal line. This is typically a high time frame level. Here you see it was the high from back in mid-August, and that's an important part to the setup. In fact, I would argue that if you don't get a high time frame sweep on the squeeze or potentially even during the consolidation phase of the PCSN, it turns it from a high probability setup into something of a lower probability setup. And there's actually a good example of what I'm talking about on the chart right in front of you. The upside actually started back in late August, and from the low to the high was about a plus 55% move. Unlike with the previous examples, it wasn't just one pump. There was actually pumps and pullbacks and upside and consolidation. And actually there was what looks like a potential PCSN just before the actual PCSN played out. You have the upside pump, you have consolidation, you have a spike, and you have downside, potential nuke. Why wasn't there any sustained downside here? Why did it level out and then bounce and then run these highs again? Well, I would argue that the reason that this PCSN didn't play out is because it didn't take any high time frame liquidity. There was no high time frame buy side sweep, and therefore it was a slightly lower probability setup. Now you could still get a short here, right? You could still play this. It actually gave a retest. I mean, if you traded this, for example, you know, in targeting range, that's still a 3-hour setup. That's still completely valid and fine. But the reason the downside was so severe in the second instance, in my opinion, is because we took a high time frame level, which in my opinion gives the setup a little bit higher probability and a better chance to play out. And so just to wrap things up, I've brought us back to the first example we looked at. Again, this is ARPA, because for me, this is the cleanest example of PCSN playing out. You have a pump. That pump should be on an alt that is potentially overbought or overextended. You are looking for signs of a reversal and chances to get short. At the top of that pump, you have consolidation. During this consolidation, it's important that OI is rising. New contracts are opening. Shorts and longs are being baited while price is just consolidating, which creates liquidity above the range and below. You have a spike above the low time frame range high. That spike should ideally take a high time frame level as well as sweeping the low time frame liquidity that is built up in the range. After the spike, you have an extremely sharp downside move that takes low time frame liquidity at the range low and ultimately retraces much of the upside. In terms of entries, your risk on entry would be a sweep of that high time frame level or low time frame signs of rejection after taking that high time frame level with your stop above or on the high. Confirmation entry would be breaks of structure, acceptance back inside the range, in which case you're looking for a retest of that spike followed by further downside. In terms of targets, it's kind of up to you, but I mean, you're really looking for sell side liquidity levels or high time frame imbalances close to the origin of the move. And there you have it. That is PCSN, Pump, Consolidate, Squeeze, Nuke. It's a setup that I've been using a lot recently with pretty great success, and it's one that I encourage you to familiarize yourself with it, backtest it, and maybe learn to integrate it into your own trading style. Again, I did not invent this. It's just liquidity at the end of the day. It's an AMD, a PO3, it's a range high, deviation, reversal. The difference with this setup is that it must occur on an altcoin that has already pumped a significant amount and preferably taken a high time frame buy side liquidity level. Slightly different style of video today to the ones I normally make, but if you like this format, let me know and I'll do more. This was the PCSN setup. Take it easy, guys, and I will catch you on the next one.